It's so nice to have you here in an energetic crowd. I can tell by that response. I'm Cynda Johnson. I'm the Dean of the Medical School here at the Virginia Tech Carilion School of Medicine, now fully a part of Virginia Tech since July 1st, which has been very exciting and kind of the end of an 11-year road for me. So this is a great opportunity for us to show off, all of us, where we are at this point in time in our maturation. I want to thank you for joining us tonight for Women in STEM. The Virginia Tech Carilion School of Medicine is proud to be tonight's host. As you may have seen in the news this summer, the medical school did become a College of Virginia Tech on July 1st. Now officially in the fold, it's a pleasure to host this event meant to support, mentor, and empower women scientists from across the university. I have the pleasure of first introducing Nancy Howell AG, President and Chief Executive Officer of Carilion Clinic, a nearly $2 billion not-for-profit integrated health system, but importantly to me, my really good friend and supporter of each other, I would say, over these last 10 years. Carilion is also one half of the partnership that made this medical school and research institute possible. And while the school is officially a College of Virginia Tech now, Carilion Clinic has remained committed to our success and serves as the training ground for our students and faculty pipeline. For many of you in the audience, Carilion is likely your healthcare home, from primary care, emergency care, specialists, and everything in between. Nancy became CEO in 2011 after mostly serving as Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer. She is also an adjunct professor for the medical school. Nancy is recognized nationally as a healthcare leader and currently serves as chair of the American Hospital Association, a member organization representing the nation's 5,000 hospitals and healthcare systems. I expect you know what that is. I mean, this is like really huge, and it has been, it is, and we are, I mean, there are many things that have been putting us all on the map and putting Roanoke on the map, but for me to go around the country and have every place know Carilion, know Nancy, know what we're doing here has really, I think, accelerated the progress in our area. Nancy was named one of Modern Healthcare's top 25 women in healthcare in 2017 and one of National Magazine's 100 most influential people in healthcare for the last 3 years. I mean, all of this, it just goes on and on. We're lucky to have her leadership here in Roanoke, and it's an honor to have her here tonight to give us a brief welcome. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Cynda, for that lovely introduction. The good news is this little talk's going to be shorter than that introduction. It's really a treat to be here, and I've already met several of you, and I have to admit I'm almost a little intimidated because there's so many very, very smart people, very capable people who have chosen to come and spend an hour or so with us tonight, and we are very grateful because you're right, Cynda, this is an incredibly special place, and we welcome you to it. We hope that you enjoy your time here, and please come back often. I want to say a special welcome to those of you who are from out of Roanoke. You know, our region is going through a sort of renaissance of sorts, and we kind of say we're going from trains, an old train city, to brains, which is sort of a shorthand for the transformation that we're going through from an industrial railroad town to the center for a rapidly growing health sciences sector. I'm reading a little book right now, and I'm not necessarily recommending this book, but the woman that is writing it is a woman named Mary Carter Bishop. Some of you might know her. She was once a journalist for the paper, and she talks about the name of the book is My Mother's Secret Son. And so she talks about her mother having a child out of wedlock, and later in her life she meets and gets to know this son. It's an interesting story. But more importantly to me, it's a history of our region. And so she talks a lot about how vibrant Roanoke was. It was a great railroad town. The American Viscose was here, which was the world leader in developing nylon textiles. So a lot of change, as those things ebbed, we were sort of left with, who are we in this region? And Virginia Tech and Carilion have stepped up. And so just 10 years ago, where you're sitting right now was an underutilized old industrial park. It was a brownfield. It flooded all the time. And look where we are now. It's really amazing. We have this terrific school of medicine with some of the smartest people you've ever met, but also some of the most caring, genuinely good people. We have this research institute that's gone from not existing with zero external funding to almost $80 million in external funding in just 8 years. In fact, we've outgrown our space. So as you've probably seen when you came in, we're doubling the size of the research institute. And Virginia Tech and Carilion are really proud to be developing this renaissance, or catalyst perhaps, of change for this renaissance and this innovation corridor that we're talking about throughout our region. We are investing many millions of dollars because we believe in this region, we believe in this partnership, and we believe in what's going to happen, not just from Virginia Tech and Carilion, but lots of things happening around it. Let me just give you one little example. So some of you may know that there was a grocery store that kind of came in under big fanfare and left. And that was a building that sat empty for quite a long time. And in it, and that's the old U-Crops building on Franklin Road, in it we redeveloped it and put a very exciting clinic in it, our Institute for Orthopedics and Neurosciences. And that was great. We had big parking lot. And then Earth Fare, a grocery store, came. And then a restaurant came. And now another restaurant's come. And now you can't find a place to park. That's actually a good thing because you can see what changes are happening right before our eyes in a relatively short period of time. So I just wanted to say thank you, welcome, and maybe just remind you that as we're adding a lot to this region, it's a lot of women who are doing a lot of work. And you're here tonight because you believe in, you care about science, you're really smart for most of you. I just want to encourage you as you listen to these phenomenal alum from Virginia Tech that you think about what a mentor meant to you. Because somewhere along the way, somebody saw you and believed in you and encouraged you. And I just ask you to do the same thing. Think about a colleague, a friend, a family member, somebody who you can help along this journey. So as you listen to this remarkable women, thank you all for being here. I hope you'll take away with you, what can I do? And how can I be a part of the future? So thank you, thanks for letting me be here. And I hope you really enjoy your time here. Like I said, come back anytime.
Thank you, Nancy. So on to the next phase here. I'm going to tell you kind of how I got involved in this and my little part of Women in STEM, and then introduce these amazing women, and we'll head off on our panel. So I attended Stanford University, and the first little known fact is the person in front here is smiling at me. So Sally and I both went to Stanford, and at different times. I can't tell you how much older I am than she is, but it's true. But of all crazy things, we lived in the same dorm. And so umpteen years apart, we find out that we were both Stanford grads, and that's been a very bonding experience. I have to say she went back again and got her PhD there. But I went on to UCLA for medical school. In any case, so I graduated with a bachelor's degree in German and biology. So that's curious. Um, Actually, I'm still the only person from Stanford to ever graduate in German and biology, but I did it for fun. I love the German language, and I thought that the biology degree could open up more career opportunities for me. I declared myself a pre-med then, but went off to Germany to study for a semester. And interestingly, it was my experience there where I did my first medical project. I did it in a German pharmacy and started by cataloging all the teas that were sold for various conditions to figure out how to keep yourself healthy by going to the German pharmacy. So I got an A in the course, and therefore I decided that I should go to be a medical student. That's really how it happened. So I did, and I married my husband, by the way, who was also a Stanford grad, and we went to UCLA. But then this was a serious note, but on a more serious note, there were only about 16% of physician graduates at that time who were women. What is interesting today, while I approach retirement, is that I have kind of accidentally backed into the fact that I'm the longest serving woman dean in the country. And so that's been sort of strange to look back on, when I really didn't even see first being in medicine in my career path, and certainly not being a dean. The number of women within a decade after I graduated doubled, and currently nearly half of the country's medical students are women. It kind of varies. It's about 49 or 49.5%. And of course, this is true in all STEM fields, not just in medicine. So one of the things is that still only about 15% of the medical school deans are women. The numbers, it was 7% when I became a dean, and then it went up to about 20, and of all things, it's shrunk a little bit again, which I'm trying to figure out, what is the dynamics behind that. So the thing is that if we are going to have women in STEM become successful and become leaders, all of these trends are important to see. We need to start with early, and we need to mentor the women, but then it needs to keep going, because somehow we're reaching a new plateau that still isn't where we want to be. Because if the numbers had tracked through, then there would be many, many more women deans at this time as one marker, and other ways in leadership. So one way we combat this is through education and fueling girls' interest in science and medicine. I've really valued my opportunities to mentor women, for me particularly for academic medicine. So while the numbers of women in the field increases, there is the still wide gap in those who continue into leadership positions, and mentoring is one way to overcome this gap. Another is to talk to each other and share experiences, which is one of the big reasons we're here tonight. So I can't wait to hear about the experiences of the women on this panel, and now I would like to introduce each panelist member. Mary Miller. These are not they did not sit in the right order, so I'm not going down the row, but it's the order that's here, and I'll mess it up if I don't read it in order. Okay, so Mary Miller is the director of the Regional Accelerator and Mentoring Program. We call it RAMP, which is a joint effort of the Roanoke-Blacksburg Technology Council, the city of Roanoke, and Virginia Western Community College. Currently in its second year, RAMP works to identify and support the growth of technology companies in our region. Before becoming the director, Mary was the president and founder of Interactive Design and Development, Inc., IDD, an information technology firm in Blacksburg. Under her 29 years of leadership and guidance, the company developed information technology solutions for Fortune 500 companies, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the Library of Congress, and the Smithsonian. Mary received her master's degree in information sciences and her PhD in instructional design from Virginia Tech. She was recognized at the 75th anniversary of Women at Virginia Tech as an Outstanding Woman Alumna, and was named the 2013 Outstanding Alumna for Virginia Tech's College of Engineering. She serves as chair of the Virginia 4-H Foundation Board and is a member of the National Bank Shares Board of Directors. Let's have a hand for Mary. And next to her is Teresa Martinez. For much of her 30-year professional career, Teresa has worked throughout our entire national trails system. This is not something everybody does. From 1987 to 2007, she worked for the Appalachian Trail Conservancy and lived in Blacksburg. In 2007, Teresa moved to Colorado to begin working on behalf of the Continental Divide National Scenic Trail. From 2007 to 12, she worked for the Continental Divide Trail Alliance until it ceased operation. At that time, Teresa and 3 colleagues established the Continental Divide Trail Coalition, where she currently serves as executive director. Since 2011, she has served on the board of the Partnership for the National Trails System and currently serves as chair of the Federal Advisory Committee to aid the U.S. Forest Service in the development of the Pacific Northwest National Scenic Trail. Teresa earned her bachelor's and master's degrees in fisheries and wildlife sciences from Virginia Tech. And what I heard from a little birdie right before this meeting is that today she was given National Leadership Award from students and faculty in natural resources. And so she has is coming in all her glory tonight. We're really happy to have you here. And Jennie Zabinskyall is next, and she is currently in her 9th year as Associate Athletics Director for Sports Nutrition in the Virginia Tech Athletics Department. She received her first undergraduate degree, that's a clue, her first undergraduate degree, in sociology from Roanoke College, while also playing basketball for all 4 years. She then became a 2-time graduate of Virginia Tech with a second undergraduate degree in human nutrition, foods, and exercise, with a dietetics option, and a graduate degree in education with an emphasis in instructional design. Jennie is in her first year as an adjunct instructor, co-teaching an online course, Advanced Nutrition and Physical Performance, for the online Masters of Agriculture and Life Science program. Please join me in welcoming her. And Ashley on the other end. Ashley Flora graduated from Virginia Tech in 2007 with a bachelor's degree in biological sciences. Her career then started at Carilion, Roanoke Memorial Hospital, as a medical laboratory scientist. In 2009, she began working at the Salem VA as a medical laboratory scientist. Ashley has recently transitioned to her current role as Research Compliance Officer. Her interest in STEM took off after spending 2 summers at an all-girls camp for girls interested in science and math at Clarkson University in New York. I think that's a good role model for the guests here tonight. So let's thank you for her now. All righty then, we are ready to start. So I have some questions to start with, but I think if anybody in the audience has a burning one to start with, we should begin there. I can't handle pregnant pauses. Okay. I'll give a little starter here. And I think a great format tonight is not everybody has to answer everything. You know, maybe 1 or 2 of you, but if you have something to say, everyone certainly can. But if we can get through more questions, I think that's ideal as well. So first of all, what attracted or inspired you towards your field, and how can we encourage more female students and young alumni to pursue STEM careers? Next question, no.
Is this on? It's on.
Yep, sounds good.
So I would just say, way back in my life, because I'm an old one up here too, but way back in my life, we think today about science and technology and engineering. When I was younger, we just thought about problem solving, and that included math and other things. My father was an engineer, and I was lucky that my father was an engineer, and at the age of 21, he was working at Curtiss-Wright, and the war had started, and he was building airplanes. He oversaw 2,000 people on a shift, and almost all of them were women. And I think he had a different perspective about the capabilities of women. There was just I didn't grow up in an environment where anything was like not for you. It was all inclusive. So if you were willing and able, but I would say my father was a huge influence. And then there was this incredible math teacher. I just gravitated towards math and science. I had wonderful teachers, had a wonderful, wonderful math teacher who just kept encouraging me. And throughout my life, it was like, I think we gravitate to what we're good at. And not that there aren't challenges in my life as far as pursuing what I was good at, but I just gravitated towards what I was good at, and people encouraged that. They just simply encouraged it. Nothing was excluded.
Well, my drive for being a dietitian really started with me being an athlete. So I played basketball at Roanoke College, and I was really intrigued by how the body worked. And I went to a liberal arts college and graduated with a BA. So I had an art interest, but then my real passion ended up being really in the science field. So when I became a dietitian, my real goal was to apply that science and to go back and make an impact and build relationships and make impacts with people through nutrition.
Very good. I think it's important to look at the positives, but also look at the challenges. So what can you describe as some professional challenges you've faced in your journeys?
Good evening. So I'll share that. I work in a field that's, when I started, I was one of only, I used to call myself a cultural mecca of the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, because I was the only woman of color who worked in a field dealing with managing a trail that was in the southwestern Virginia area, and so you can imagine it was unique. But one of the challenges was learning how not to make that an issue. I sort of just never thought about it. I just did it as I would have done it, regardless of what I looked like on the outside. And I never actually, I can say that working within the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, one of the reasons I actually chose the career, I could have worked for the Forest Service, the National Park Service. It was that I was hired based on my skill and merit, not based on, at that time, the fact that I was a woman or a person of color. And while that has been really great for people to enter into federal agencies, and I would never say that's not a great thing, for me personally, it was wonderful to have mentors who actually saw in me something that I didn't see in myself, and opened up those doors for me to actually be successful. And I think the challenge was really getting over my own ego at times, but to be able to feel comfortable and not, and trust and confidence in my own ability, and feel like I could do what I was doing as well as anybody else.
For me, my personal challenge came in high school when my guidance counselor told me there was no chance I was ever going to get into Virginia Tech. So that was my dream, and I really wanted to pursue biology, and at that time maybe even biomedical engineering. And I was inspired to do that, and I applied anyways. I told my mom, I don't care if we're just going to pay the mission, to submit your application. I want to do it and see if I can get in, and then I did. And I think that's so important with young women in this field, is never to give up on yourself and keep believing in yourself and what you believe, and don't let anyone from the outside tell you that you can't do it.
That's important. Why don't we go ahead and have the rest of you answer that, because these are good answers and very helpful for our audience.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that. I was transferring into Virginia Tech, and I had all the confidence in the world that I was going to get in because I graduated cum laude from Roanoke. Well, I actually was denied admission my first time, and here I am, 23 at this point, already thinking I was spending too much time in school. But I had some great parents that were very supportive and said to apply again. So I swallowed my ego and decided to apply again after I took some schools at Virginia Western, because I think that was part of my issue. I needed some science classes to get in. But I got in that second time, and it really, when you're passionate about something and you have that drive, it was almost like nothing was going to stop you. And I did have a lot of mentorship through the dietetics degree. So Heather Cox, Carol Papillon, Michelle Rockwell are all professors in that program, and I was the one who was doing the non-traditional route, being a little bit older, wiser, mature, but they really helped me through that.
Thank you. I would like to, I'm going to pick on Sally, but I would like also to introduce Dean Sally Morten. This program is really hers. She started through the College of Science, and maybe you could stand up and we could recognize her tonight. And now you have to ask a question.
So I was wondering whether you think the challenges you faced are different for you as women as compared to, say, what men have faced when you talked about obstacles of getting in, that might be common for men as well, but what has been distinctly different for you as a woman?
Well, I'll say sometimes if you're in a career that is still dominated by men can, there's a lot of education that we continually need to do, little bits and big bits. And I think I heard that some of us said we don't pay a lot of attention to that. You just kind of have to not think about gender, you more think about the task. And yet, I could tell you, funny stories. There are funny stories. They don't break you, but there are funny stories. I got dismissed from a class at Virginia Tech one time because I was the only woman in the class, and it was abstract algebra, and it was taught in Patton Hall. Every time I drive by the door, every time I drive by the classroom, I still think about being dismissed in a class. My love was mathematics. I think I told you that. I took all of my electives in mathematics, and I really wanted to earn a degree in mathematics, but there were no jobs for mathematicians in 1972. Now, you all think that's kind of funny. You could go on to graduate school, but I wasn't financially in a situation to go on to graduate school, and I wanted to get a job. So I could either go to Washington and work for the government in statistics, or I could get certified to teach. So at the very end, I changed my major so that I could get certified to teach, and I had to change my major to education. So this professor, I was in abstract algebra and the only woman in the class, and he just assumed, here's somebody in education degree, you're in the wrong class. And I said, no, sir, I need to be here. And he said, I highly doubt it. This is abstract algebra. I said, no, sir, I need this class. So, and I did really well in the class, which seemed to irritate him. But it was a long time ago. I mean, I'm not saying it was just a long time ago. He handed out the first test in reverse order, lowest grade to highest grade. And he held mine up at the end, and he said, gentlemen, this little lady on the front row beat all of you. Don't let it happen again. And he gave me my test. But I sat there, and I pursued, and I did it. But that's it. It bothered me a little bit, but not, I just knew I had to do it and not pay any attention. But I want to just also say, for everybody who I've had to educate, and hope that they'll grow a little bit. There are men in my life that have been incredible. And I see Jim Johnson up there, who was one of the first, he gave me my first job at Virginia Tech when I finished my master's. And I don't think that Jim, there are great men in the world that have had an influence on me. And I don't think that Jim thinks iota about gender. I think he thinks about what I need done, what are your capabilities, and I'll never forget he said to me, what tools do you need? And I thought, any tools? What computer do you want? How do you want it configured? And I thought, oh my gosh, he's really going to be good to me. He was like, really, he's wonderful. So I got lucky. So there are constantly things. I had a guy sell me my very first laser printer, and he wouldn't tell me how it worked because he thought I was the secretary, and I owned the company. So I told him it was okay. I would leave and go get the president of the company, and I'd come back. So I left the room, stayed gone for a few minutes, and I came back and reached out my hand. I said, like, to meet you, I'm Dr. Mary Miller. I'm the president of this company. It was like, oh. It's like, okay. So, but that's all in jest. That's all in jest because it doesn't really matter. What matters is getting the job done. Right.
Mary, I want to ask you a follow-up. So the first story you told us, getting the paper back, would you have done anything differently now? Would you have said anything differently than you did at that time?
Well, I don't think he would have said that today. But I would hope that we are not, I hope that even for him to say, he said it publicly to the whole class. And I just hope that there are people who still might be irritated that the woman on the front row had the highest grade. There are people, I was just with somebody a couple of weeks ago who was an incredibly accomplished woman. And this accomplished woman and this accomplished gentleman and I were having a conversation. And she's kind of the first female to hold an important job. It's a very important job. And the gentleman said to her, let's be honest, you got the job because you're a woman, right? And I just thought she's an incredibly accomplished woman and incredibly high standards. And so I keep thinking we've gone a long way, but we may not have gone a long way. So I want to fight and I want to kind of confront, but I've decided I can influence more by not doing that, because I ultimately have to survive in my job. So I don't do a lot of confrontational correction. I try to use humor a little bit, and it can be a little, I may be old, but I'm still capable. I mean, some people, you know, I mean, it's like, I don't know. I think humor's worked for me throughout my career, but I've been in a very male-dominated career.
Thank you for that. Somebody else?
Yeah, I think I'm in a unique situation in that I'm in dietetics, which is very female-dominated, but in my workplace, being in athletics, it's very male-dominated. So I've had challenges dealing with more from an athletic side, even within our performance team. So my other scientists in the athletic department, we're looking at sports med, the athletic trainers, our docs, our sports psychologists. They're all men. So I'm the only female in our sports science team committee and meetings. And so part of the challenge there is being able to handle confrontation and problem solve and be assertive. But the nice thing is our athletic department is very supportive of diversity. So like the other ladies have said, I've never felt like gender in the room. It's just a matter of, do you know the information and do you know how to share it, and do we know how to problem solve together?
And I'll just add real quickly. So when I started my career, I was actually a volunteer, and we were building the Appalachian Trail. So much different than now. I would have, Carhartts and trail boots and living in the woods for 5 days and 4 nights at a time, building trail. And so I just learned, because it was we had a lot of retired military folks, and then I'd show up this little 18-year-old, 19-year-old young woman trying to build trail with these guys who were Marine Corps drill sergeants and such. And, they would have this perception of, okay, young lady, you just sit there and we'll do all the hard work. So I just learned to be the best I could be, because I figured if I built a rock step, it would be the most perfect rock step, so that it was basically the example. And I just led from that way. So I just learned to be whatever I was doing, to be the best at it and let that speak for itself. And then use humor when it was in those other times when it wasn't so easy to show and demonstrate the best. It was just kind of laugh it off and have humor, and then not hold it against them. And at the end of the day, some of my first best friends on trail crews were these older gentlemen that were used to young women not being able to do heavy physical labor. They became some of my best friends, and I became their crew leader. So then I had power. And so they would often be the ones, we'd all share the labor. I was equally capable of carrying a 70-pound pack full of tools, and that I think also demonstrated that I wasn't afraid of hard work, and it probably helped reshape their perspective of what women could do. So I think I just focused on what I could do and be the best at it.
So, very good. Audience, questions? We have a microphone that will come your way. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, now I forgot my question. No, I was just saying, when we talk about how women have evolved from when I graduated from college back in 1980, when I started work until I retired now, things were totally different. There were not a lot of women in the senior management ranks. Now there are at the organization that I worked for. But there's still not as many as there are men. So when you talk about being the best, I know women who have been the best at their job, but did not necessarily get the promotions up the ranks because whoever was making those decisions liked someone else better that happened to be a male. And eventually they did have to promote females, along the way. And it wasn't always the best female either. Sometimes it was the one that the men thought that could get along with it. So what do you perceive is the current status in the workplace now with that regard, as into making sure that women get advanced equally up the ranks?
So I'll just share, I'm the executive director of the Continental Divide Trail Coalition, and we are one of 30 trail maintaining clubs across the United States. But of the big three national trails, so I'm sure many of you have heard of the Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail, all three of these organizations have female executive directors, which I think is pretty awesome. And in the case of the Appalachian Trail Conference or Conservancy, when I worked for them, they were the conference, I always was really blessed because the chair of the board of directors was a female, and that was in the early 80s. So I think I was at least in a place where we were always lifting each other up, and I'm really blessed in that way. And I think what I've learned is maybe this is a long game, and that maybe we can't resolve every situation, but is it now in a place of power, how can I help lead and lift people up and open those doors so that at least we're building that today for tomorrow, and so that other people don't have to be like, oh, this is how it was when I was in your shoes, you're gonna have to experience the same thing. Well, I think that's really archaic thinking, that we should be really making it better. And learning how to do that, just reminding ourselves that it's a long game, and it's incremental steps, and hopefully someday we don't have to take the steps, it's just the way it is. But for now, just reminding that, and every little one is a little win. It's a little win, it's a little win, so.
Very good. Anybody else on that?
So I work for the VA hospital locally, and we're lucky to have our medical center director and our chief of staff are both female. And I feel like I work in a work environment that we have a fair shot, that we're not discriminated against. And our interview panels are performance-based, and they're based on ratings, and you would really have to explain yourself if you went for someone that was male and lower scored than a female. I don't think it would happen.
So that tells us that systems can also be our friend, right?
Right. I was going to say that and we look around us and look at Nancy Agee, look at yourself, look at the examples that we have. We have wonderful examples. However, if you look at the statistics nationwide, what you pointed to, we're still not doing quite as well as we should have. Or we're maybe, if we're half the population, if women are half the population. So I'm kind of interested in the next level. I mean, we've seen lots of changes over the years. We're entering a workforce scarcity. There's a workforce scarcity. And I can tell you right now that there's dozens of jobs open for computer programmers and security officers and people who want to go into that kind of technology I was in. People are hiring and looking, and there's less discrimination in those jobs because there's such scarcity. They can't afford to discriminate. So if you're really good at what you do, you can move up. But I think the numbers aren't where they should be. There's a lot of education been going on in the last couple of years, and I look at board. I know that major boardrooms want to change. It's really hard. So I always, while I said earlier I wasn't an in-your-face confrontational person, we all benefit by people who call out boardrooms that are not considerate of the talent within their organization. So we see organizations trying to make corrections after they've been called out, whether you're a Coca-Cola or whether you're some big corporation. When somebody else, so I kind of silently love that. I love the fact that there are people watching, measuring, and calling people out and saying, can we do better? Don't we need to be inclusive of everybody? How is it that corporate boardrooms are still heavily populated with men when we know that women bring different solutions to the table? So we're leaving our best solutions off the table. We're not being as good as we can be. We need to be more inclusive. So that's the message. We need to be more inclusive because we get different solutions when we are inclusive.
Mary, it makes me think of a couple of things to respond to what you said. I think I heard on the news just this week that California has a bill that's going to require a woman on every corporate board. So that would be a major change.
And we benefit from that.
Yes, indeed.
All benefit from that. No matter how they got there, they will have successful women on those
That's
boards.
right.
Those boards will slowly benefit. They will benefit. And so I love those wins. I don't like the fact that they had to be made to do something, but in the long run, they'll be glad they did. And so that kind of leadership, and companies that are into it are really into it. They say, no, we've learned our lesson. We've got to be all inclusive. We need everybody at the table. And it's not just men and women. It's gender, not just gender diversity, it's race diversity. It's different kinds of thinking. It's age diversity. You don't want to work around people all the same age. There's something to be said for institutional knowledge and older people joining in the conversation. So diversity has always been something I've really loved. But sometimes we have to make it happen, but okay, it's going to happen nonetheless.
Right. And my second comment is you said that women, diverse people bring new solutions. And it has been my unfortunate experience that well-stayed groups don't always want new solutions, so that actually is uncomfortable. So our presence and our different ideas don't feel quite right. It gets people out of their comfort zone, and sometimes they need to be pushed to be in that new space. Teresa?
No, I would completely agree. There's so much I could say.
I know what
I don't even
you
know
had a
where
lot
to
of nerves
start.
on this one, Mary.
It's one of those things that, so I'm a founder of the Continental Divide Trail Coalition as well, and one of the things that we did is, one of the things I learned from the previous organization before it closed is that it was very top-down, and it wasn't very grassroots, and it really suffocated ideas and innovation and creativity, partly because it was always two people making decisions, and they weren't always the best ones, but we had to implement them anyways. And so when we built CDTC, we sort of said, one, we're going to stand to the scrutiny. So we wanted people to come in. We didn't want to be in an echo chamber. We wanted to have all of the stakeholders at the table. So even if it took longer to come to decisions, we had better decisions because they were informed by the people impacted by them. And so it's very democratic. It's an incredibly democratic system. And it's not always perfect. It's a lot of work. It's people work. It's mostly people. It's almost all people and human relations and authentic and trust and all these kind of things. And then the other part of that is just always whenever somebody comes in, this is what I used to do all the time. Someone would call and complain about something, and I said, that is great. How about you help us solve the problem? And they'd be like, oh, no, actually, that you're doing great, because I don't like funny when you ask people to actually provide solutions, they all of a sudden stop complaining. It's really interesting how that works. Put them to work. But I do think it's one of those things that I'm learning where we are now, where we have built this organization. In just 6 years, we've gone from a volunteer executive director to 10 employees doing all incredible work for the benefit of the American public. And what has happened is because we've invited all these people to the table, diverse, age, color, background, users, age, all of it, what we're finding is this innovative, we never even thought about that. And for people who've been in the trail world for so long, it's really cool to think about what's the next 30, 50, 100 years of these national trails going to look, what are they going to look like? Well, now we have more people helping us think that through. And I do think the innovation is critical to how we solve problems in the future. When I look at the CDT, for example, we're dealing with climate change, which is changing rapidly. We're dealing with forest health issues, fire events that are abnormally normal now. And we don't know the answers. Science and technology is not keeping up with reality. And so we need all those people at the table to be able to help us think, what if, and how about, and why not? And we actually do that a lot. Why not do that? We can, so that would be what I would say.
Thank you. Other questions?
Sort of on a related note to everything that you guys have already mentioned, and something that you actually mentioned previously, is we are starting to see these institutionalized procedures to include more women and more diverse workforce. But something that I also experienced that you mentioned is I don't want to be picked because I was the female minority scientist. And I've experienced things where people tell me, make sure you stress that you're a female, make sure you stress that you're a minority. And that makes me really uncomfortable to think that someone would simply pick me because I was a female, because I was a minority. Do you guys have any ideas on what we can do to combat that aspect of it, where someone's not being picked because they tick two boxes, as opposed to they're being picked because they're the best person for the job?
So I'll just, it's a really interesting question, and you could debate it either direction, and I will say, sort of try to do this briefly. Privilege is something that I don't have. I have privilege because I have a job and I have a lot of things, but when I walk into a room, I don't see the world. I'm not seen the way typically people are seen, definitely in my field. So that's something that if while I made the decision I did because I was based on merit, I also recognized that was I got lucky. I got really lucky. I had a great mentor who invited me to the table because I have merit. If I didn't have that, I might have done otherwise and then leveraged that as much as I could because it provided an opportunity that I might not otherwise had because of the color of my skin and the fact that I'm a female. So I wouldn't look down on that at all because, again, it's only going to benefit. These are long games. These are not like tomorrow. This is next generation. And so we're always constantly, at least I am, I should say, thinking about who's coming behind me and making sure they don't have to suffer like I did. They don't have to deal with what I did. So if that means it's going to open up more doors, I might do it. So that would be my only personal response. That there's nothing wrong with it.
Well, I would just say there's not a man in the room that would get the job and ask themselves, did they pick me because I'm a man? And so I ask you to try to, in your own head, now the men have nothing to do with that. I'm just saying we have scripts in our head that we need to let go. I'm challenging you to let it go. If you got a job that you wanted and you applied for it and you were capable and you can do that job, then you go, girl. You take the job, you do a good job, and yes, you're not responsible for what they did. You're responsible for what you bring to the table, okay? Now, what I will object to, and I really don't know this, most people today have no bandwidth to bring the woman on board and set them in the corner. If you were disabled after you got the job, if they weren't going to give you any real assignments, if they weren't going to let you really develop and grow, then you're in the wrong job. No matter why you got the job, you're in the wrong job, right? So the reality is, you go, take the job. We've got to change the scripts in our own head. We've got to believe that they chose the best candidate they could have for the job. So you go, you bloom, you come back, and you tell us how it went. We have wrong scripts.
So I'm very excited that you all are here, and as a woman in the science field, I'm also a mom. And so I'm sitting here thinking, wow, I wish my two little girls were sitting right here with me right now listening to you. So I'm a veterinarian, and my children have grown up in the clinic. Neither one of them wants to be a vet. It's disgusting. They want to be engineers. They want to do anything else. So what I'm wondering from you is what you're doing. So I think we need to get to these girls now at this age. I have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. What are you doing now in the community? What are you all doing to help empower these little girls who are looking up to you and looking up to us in the STEM field as role models? What can we do, or what are you doing now?
Well, I would tell you, I'm the only one here maybe with an 8-year-old. I mean, not an 8-year-old child, but 8-year-old granddaughter, right? I've got a couple of 8-year-old granddaughters, and I am very conscious of scripts and what we say to our children. So I'm conscious of that. I'm also conscious of opportunities. We've got to let them all develop all of their skill sets. So I'm just really very conscious of opportunities, my scripts, and what I encourage them to give a try at, and versus that. That it's been a long time, but we still, and I would never say this to a little girl, don't get dirty, right? That whole thing, it starts early. It starts really early. So that's me. I'm very focused on it. It's at top of mind. And when I'm dealing with young women and when I'm dealing with young girls, I will say, and I know Peggy Mazzaros was a great mentor of mine, and she did a lot of work with NSF funding and girls in technology in the Appalachian region. Now, that was further southwest than us. And I worked with Peggy for a long time. My company was doing solutions with her research. And I will say that one of the things she uncovered in the Appalachian regions is that men were more detrimental about thinking what jobs their daughters could have than women were. And it had to do, when she uncovered it, it had to do with the fear that the fathers thought if their daughter pursued a STEM focus that they would have to move away to get a job. And if their daughters would be teachers or nurses, and not that nurses isn't STEM related, but if they chose careers where their daughters would stay close to home with the understanding that their sons might grow up and have to leave the Appalachian regions. So it was a lot there in that research and the scripting and thinking about what we say matters, and what we think matters, but what we say matters.
I have a question I want to pose to the audience. You have to raise your hand to what you think the answer to this should be. So every week I get this blurb about the Association of American Medical Colleges, and it just has all the things that have happened, and I'm always interested to see how many deans have changed over since the last one, and it's far too many. But the one last week was interesting. And so I won't name names because you could figure out who these people are, but there was a very prominent dean, male dean in the upper Midwest, and this was just a little paragraph, and it was a laudatory paragraph, and what it said was the college was celebrating its 125th anniversary, and there was a panel of deans that he invited in order to talk about being deans and talk about their future. So it's, well, yes, they were all men. Now, they're all great men, but they weren't of any particular kind. I knew them all because I've been hanging out there for so long, and they were from different places in the country, and I thought, really? No women out of all those choices? It's not like they were all his best friend. The hardest one for me was actually I will tell you who that was, the dean at the University of Kansas. He is my dear friend, but he was my student. And you know, when another dean ends up being your student, I thought, so how were these people chosen? And what I want to know is, I will see this person in November. How many of you think I should confront him about it? Raise your hand. Thank you. And how many do not? And the rest of you did not raise your hand. But I would say a majority thought so. I will do that, and if I ever have the opportunity or you see me, ask me what was the outcome of it. Because I actually think, I kept it because I'm going to, but I thought, oh, he's going to go, you know, you're raining on my parade, right? I have this big party. But these are exactly the things that happen that cause it to continue.
So I wanted to go real back to the youth question, because I do think planting seeds, which you never know when, that one of the things that I learned on very early on, and this is my parents, God bless them, I love them, but they used to always tell me no, like you can't do that. And I would say, yes, I can. I know I can. And so I think what I've learned, especially when we work with youth, and we work with a lot of youth in inner city Denver, it's pretty much one of the only places where a lot of diversity happens. And just to set this up, a lot of schools in Denver, they all have windows and they all look to the Rocky Mountains that are literally 30, 40 minutes away. But most of those kids never go to the mountains because they don't have, maybe their parents work 2 jobs, there's a lot of barriers. And so how do we engage those children when they don't even have access, just physical access, much less they might want to be there, but they can't get there? And I just think saying yes, learning how to find the ways to say, yes, you can, yes, you belong. I will bring you with me. I can't do that for every child, but you know, finding ambassadors and people and guides to take them that they can trust to go with them. I have 2 nieces. I think about them all the time and how they see the world today versus how I saw the world when I was their age. And I think every single one of us has a responsibility to say yes. and to open that door, and again, to lift them up and say, why not? Why can't you do that? And so even if they go into something crazy, your children, and it's not veterinary medicine, which is fine, maybe they'll do something, like whatever they do, it's yes. Yes, you can. Go do it. And don't ever let anyone tell you no. Now, for my parents, I think they were challenging me to demonstrate that I could. Like, you work hard, be honest, and prove it. And I think that was a healthy skill as a kid to learn, just to be a hard worker and to be honest and all those things. But yes, would be my answer. Whenever I have the chance to work with youth, it's always yes. Call me, come see me. How can I help you? Because that's something we can do for everyone around us, and it's something personally we can do to change. It's not, and that would be one other thing I would say. Just because we have positions where we have decision-making authority, or you can do that. That's one way leadership works. Leadership also works wherever you are. So anybody at any point can say yes to anybody they work with, they mentor, they support, they work for. You can tell your boss you're awesome. You can lead from within. And I would say that that's something that, for me, another paradigm shift would be learning that leadership is not just a title, it's a way of thinking. And that's how we also make change happen. Thank you.
What happened to our other microphone? You're going to get in your steps today.
So being a senior in high school and been wanting to do STEM for my whole life, I was exposed to it at a very young age to where I adapt to it and I liked it. But I feel like, we've had tons of opportunity to be a girl in STEM and do things like that. But I feel like a lot of females are exposed to it the wrong way or overexposed to it to where it turns them away from it. And I was just wondering what you guys' stance was on that, if you've experienced it or if anything has happened that you've seen girls get pressured to do it, to compete with their male counterparts, or just compete in the field itself, to where you feel like they have to do it to where it turns them away.
Were you asking about programming and being overexposed to it? So let me just say this. This is one area that I would encourage. There's wonderful, wonderful women-only programming groups, right? Where women can, and they're incredibly successful. And so you do need a safe place to learn. It is, and you need to understand how it is you learn. But you should seek out, if you really want to, anybody in the room really wants to learn a language, learn to program, there's ways to do that. There's all kinds of groups, and they tend to be rather collaborative, but women coding, girls coding, incredible success story. It's something that we ought to think about. Not unlike, we know that gender separation is a great way to learn in a lot of areas where you feel like you're willing to ask the question, you're afraid you'll look dumb, you don't want to move forward. Get in a group where you feel safe. But the women-only girls code, women's code, all those kind of coding that are gender specific, incredibly successful. And we have them in the region. We have them all over. So I can help put you into, you can find those groups and really have a lot of fun.
Thank you. Last question.
Thank you. While I feel like you don't hear as much about compensation issues based on gender as much as you did 10 to 15 years ago, obviously we're still not where we'd like to be at this point. So have you ladies had any experience or thoughts regarding the matters regarding compensation being tied to gender?
I'll answer it first because I've been doing some work on that. Unfortunately, it is still 70 cents on the dollar for women in medicine and approximately the same for women PhDs. So if you take all things and average them out over, for example, in medicine, it's not about the specialty, the hours worked, or anything else. If you get rid of all the confounders, it's still 70 cents on the dollar.
I think that's discouraging. So, I mean, I think we've come so far, and I want to say I owned a company. I used to hire a lot of people. In my company, there was no discrimination. And maybe at a little pocket, some of us feel like we're compensated fairly. However, then we look at the data. So I always think we got to really look at the data. We just can't go like, I'm fine. That's a thing that women have said for a long time. I'm fine. I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. I'm fine. So I don't know that I don't think we're doing, it's still discouraging to me. It's still discouraging. And I think in some countries, there's some legislation that's coming to bear to guarantee that women are paid accurately. And again, I go back to my earlier comment, I'm not big on saying, do you have to use the stick or the carrot, right? But if the stick is the only way to get the attention that we really, we're not doing this correctly, then maybe the stick eventually has to be the answer. I think it's education, I think it's uninformed, but there's been a lot of education and information, and we still are falling short, quite honestly.
Right. One of the main reasons is that women don't negotiate for salary as men do. They're, as a group, more likely to be put off by having the answer be no. And so it's not necessarily a will to pay the women less, but you pay what you can negotiate for. I had a woman in STEM, PhD, who worked for me when I was dean at East Carolina, and I taught the women's group there. I participated in it, and I gave her a promotion. And so I was discussing salary with her, and what she asked for was considerably more than I thought that I was going to pay her. And I think she saw my surprise, and she said, "You taught me to do that." So she got her salary. All right, well, I am told it is time to finish, and first, I'll let you do the rest of the closing and the final applause, right? So Debbie Day from Alumni Relations is here to give a few words and close the program. Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much. I don't know about you, but I am so pleased to have been in the presence this evening of these amazing, wonderful, talented women who've been brave enough to share their story tonight. And so, Mary, Teresa, Jennie, and Ashley, thank you very much for being here. One more round of applause. One thing you may not realize is that behind the scenes, this is not just one person putting this on. And so the colleges that these women represent have nice, wonderful teams that are here in the audience and that have helped us pull this together with the help of our central networking team. And so College of Engineering, College of Natural Resources and Environment, and we also have Dean Paul Winnesdorfer here, so another dean with us this evening, College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, and of course the College of Science. So we appreciate the collaborative effort, and our friends and partners and part of our university here at Virginia Tech Carilion School of Medicine. We thank you very much. So the message that I have to leave you with tonight is that we need you. We need all of you, just like these women who came here tonight, to tell our story. We need you to share what makes Virginia Tech special, how your own experiences prepared you to do what you do, to solve problems and to make a difference in the world. And so we challenge each of you to do that. You can stay connected with Virginia Tech, with our alumni and our friends that are in the audience through mentoring like these women did, coming and talking in a panel, going into classes at Virginia Tech, attending a chapter event. Our chapter president, Matt's back here with us as well. Of course, any financial contribution that you feel so a need for, we certainly feel a need for, and we'd appreciate anything that you can do. And lastly, we just ask you that you stay in touch, with us as an alumni association, what we're doing in Roanoke. Nancy, thank you for being here. What we are doing in Roanoke is so important to Virginia Tech and to everyone in this room, both in Blacksburg and here. So we thank you, thank you, thank you. We invite you to go back downstairs to continue the conversation, to continue asking questions and meeting each other and enjoying the evening. So thank you very, very much.